Governor Newsom talking about, just come arrest me, whatever. This was fascinating to me that the network that he chose to go on and say this is Midas Touch Network. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this is a complete leftist, extreme leftist group of individuals that actually rose to prominence on Twitter. Back then, it was called, it was Twitter X, on social media, that was pushing back against the Trump administration and really got a lot of prominence and popularity as a network of coordinated, really insane leftists, frankly, who were trying to promote a lot of leftist viewpoints and more of the extreme, and they are very well funded, and they're not one of these cable networks like ABC or MSNBC that are known to be leftist but at least try to have some kind of modicum of hey, we're fair and balanced and we just report the news kind of thing. I mean, this is a network that is clearly biased. It's incredibly activist. And I just think, Mike Donnelly, it's really fascinating that this is the network that Gavin Newsom chose to go on to make these kinds of comments.
Well, that's not really surprising. I mean, he's got a friendly audience there and he's communicating to his base. But to your point earlier, was he trying to reposition himself in a more moderate strain, looking at a possible run for the presidency? It is interesting to see how the political alignment is shifting and how the different Democrat leaders are reading the current situation as it relates to immigration. As we run up to the midterms, it's going to be interesting to see how this works. But, look, Gavin Newsom has brought this on himself. He's been governor there for a long time, and it's not just him, but previous governors in California. They've created this entitlement mentality where the illegals have come in, they've got driver's licenses, as Ron DeSantis was saying on the news clip before we came on. They give them health care, they let them go into schools. I mean, he was complaining on the news clip about how these quote-unquote mixed status families are afraid to go to graduations because they might get arrested or whatever for being there. They brought this on themselves by not enforcing federal law and by not allowing the feds to enforce federal law. And now the chickens have come home to roost and they're paying for their foolishness.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and speaking of the midterms, all of this is interesting to watch and to play out. And do you think that this type of coordinated strategy, and specifically pushing back against a central part of the Trump mandate, I mean, I think there were two really main items that at least the American people who overwhelmingly voted for Trump wanted, which of course was DOGE, and the accountability for all of our reckless government spending, taxes wrapped up in all of that. So DOGE and immigration. I mean, those were the two really key things. And so is this a little too early? I mean, that the Democrats maybe should have waited strategically until, maybe spring or summer of next year heading into the midterms?
That's an interesting question. I mean, when you look at polls, the number one thing that people voted on was the economy, and they believe that Donald Trump was the person to get the economy going again. And, okay, we've had a little bit of a kerfuffle in the stock market over the tariffs, but everything has come back, and the gas is down, eggs are now affordable again, and the economy is going in the right direction. And then second and third were the things you just pointed out, DOGE, accountability, and immigration. And, the Democrats are grasping at straws, I think. They don't really have an issue to stand on. Trump owns all three of those issues. They're going to have a very difficult time in the midterm. And it is befuddling to me to try to understand why they think supporting illegal aliens protesting, riding around on motorcycles, waving the Mexican flag while cars are burning helps them. I don't understand that. Can you explain that to me?
Well, I think that they're spending $20 million to try to explain it to young men, and it's not really going to be effective. But Mike Donnelly, really appreciate it as always, and we will continue to talk about this and another interesting lawsuit when we come right back here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
This is Abraham Hamilton III with AFR, and we're sending Bibles. Here's Michael with Bible League International.
I'm a new creation in Christ. I'm a new creation in Christ. Those were the words that came from the mouth and the heart of Mabel, the former village witch doctor that I gave a Bible to when I visited Tanzania, Africa. You see, she had lived 65 years in spiritual darkness, didn't know Jesus, had misled people through witchcraft, but now she had left all of that to follow Jesus, and she had her very own Swahili Bible. And today, through Mabel's transformed testimony, do you know hundreds have come to Christ on the continent of Africa, the part of the world where Christianity is growing in the greatest numbers, and yet 9 of 10 new believers go without a Bible. But enter the AFR listening family. Our goal by the end of June is to bless 16,000 waiting Christians. You've done that for 12,000. We've got 4,000 to go. So at $5 a Bible, $100 sends 20. Would you call 800-YES-WORD? That's 800-YES-WORD, or give it sendbiblesnow.org. Sendbiblesnow.org.
We're going to be going back to the Holy Land in March of 2026. Hello, I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. We've got trips planned to the Holy Land and also to Greece on a tour we call the Footsteps of Paul. Both of those are in March of 2026. You can do both, or you can do one or the other. You can find out all the information by going to wildmangroup.com, WILDMON group.com, and check out the itinerary, the costs, and everything. We're going to be going to the Jordan River, the Sea of Galilee, the holy city of Jerusalem. We're going to Bethlehem. There's just so much to see in Israel. And then in Greece, it's tracking the footsteps of St. Paul. So again, for more information on these March 2026 tours, go to wildmangroup.com, WILDMON group.com.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Stern. Stand by for news and commentary next. There's a new Minnesota champion in girls high school softball, but their pitcher is a boy. Champlain Park High School crowned the Class 4A champions, led by Marissa Rothenberger. Marissa is a boy formerly known as Charlie. He stands 6 feet tall. The young man allowed just 2 runs over 21 innings and garnered all-tournament team honors. The White House condemned the high school's victory, said those who violated federal law will be held accountable. Now, Minnesota's under federal investigation for Title IX violations, refusing to comply with President Trump's executive order banning men from women's sports. Well, it's clear that Champlain Park used the genetic makeup of their star pitcher to make Minnesota's sports history. But for most girls and their parents, the school will not be remembered for winning state as much as they will be for cheating to get there. Be sure to get a copy of my new book. It's called Star Spangled Blessings, available at your favorite bookstore.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. Well, as the riots are spreading across the nation, there's an interesting piece, or I guess just photograph of a map that's being shared across social media. I'm not sure where it originated, the accuracy of this, even though, we're seeing that there are riots popping up even in my former home state of Colorado around Denver. There are other suggestions that that other riots in the same context will continue to spread. But this particular graphic is suggesting that particularly on Saturday, June 14th, there will be coordinated riots in major cities across the country, even including Florida, which I think is a little bit preposterous, because if anyone tries, I have absolutely no doubt that Governor DeSantis and his team will not act in the same way as Gavin Newsom and the state of California. But let's get Will Chamberlain's take. He is senior counsel at the Article 3 Project. And Will, we've been talking about the context of, the lawsuit that Gavin Newsom filed to try to impede Donald Trump from actually utilizing the federal guard, a little bit about 10 U.S.C. section, 12406. And I just want to get your take also as a lawyer, similarly as my previous guest, on, what exactly is going on here legally, where President Trump is on solid ground, and then also, the political fallout here.
Yeah, I think President Trump is very clearly going to prevail here. The president has the authority under multiple federal statutes to call up the National Guard. It's not merely just for an insurrection. He has the right to call them up merely to protect federal buildings and federal assets if he wants to. The idea, LAP is clearly not handling this. There's been continuing rioting for days, so I can't imagine there's any reasonable theory here that would say, that would allow. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. If there's any reasonable theory that a court could strike this down on, and if they do, the Supreme Court would reject it right away.
Yeah, and if there is a venue that somehow is friendly to Gavin Newsom, and that judge somehow rules at least temporarily in favor of Newsom, hopefully the Supreme Court would take that up and strike it down pretty quickly. But what can we anticipate, at least while this is pending? I mean, we're seeing the riots in LA expand. We're seeing, this is an ongoing situation. It's not like we have, 3 to 6 months for the courts to take their time adjudicating this.
Yeah, I actually don't think we'll see any sort of injunction here. I think, and I think the Supreme Court would stay any injunction. So I think this is one of those cases where it's so clearly the president's military authority that even a Supreme Court that's been getting a little ornery isn't going to get in the way here. It's just a really bad argument coming from Gavin Newsom. There's obviously the federal government has the right to protect its assets in Los Angeles. Rioters have been actively obstructing ICE operations in Los Angeles, burning down cars, taking over city streets, and Newsom and Mayor Bass have been completely ineffectual. So I don't think there's any chance that this gets stopped.
And Will Chamberlain, speaking then of kind of the 30,000-foot perspective of, Trump's immigration mandate, I think from the American people they were mentioning last segment, this was one of the key voting issues in 2024. And what we saw with the Biden administration, allowing just hundreds of thousands of illegals in, some of them that have been associated with gangs, violent, all of these other things, but even just ignoring the law and having all of these people just in this mass infiltration that I would certainly characterize as an invasion. I think that that's even supported under a legal definition. Where is Trump at, and Tom Homan and the rest and DHS and ICE overall, not just specific to California, but overall in the fulfillment of that mandate to say, we are going to crack down on how many illegals were brought here, especially under the Biden administration, and advance this forward. That was a key part of the America First agenda.
That's right, and they're working hard on it. Obviously, I think they're very much in need of additional funding. They need more staff, frankly. Under current law, it's not only the fact that they need a lot more ICE officials to be able to detain people, to conduct these operations and find illegal aliens, but then there needs to be a lot more funding in terms of detention space. There needs to be a lot more funding in terms of immigration judges so that we can process people through under current law. All this needs money. But I think they're working on it. They're clearly doing what they can. And I think people, it's also, you're imagine turning just a giant tanker around. That's kind of what it is to steer ICE away from its, original, under Biden, ICE was basically doing not all that much, occasionally deporting an extremely dangerous criminal, but that's about it. ICE's mandate has changed, and it's taking some time to get things going in the right direction. But I know Tom Holmes is doing a great job, and the other thing I'd say is that shouldn't forget that border crossing within months of Trump taking office. That's an incredible policy accomplishment, and so now it's the much harder job of finding the illegal aliens who are in the United States and getting them out.
I'm speaking with Will Chamberlain, who is senior counsel at the Article 3 Project. You can follow him on X as well. And, and speaking of this whole mandate and the need for funding for some of this, there are legitimate things that our federal government should spend money on, and immigration enforcement and the personnel that's required to fulfill that is one of them. And I think part of the frustration, a huge part of the frustration right now with Congress, is that it doesn't seem like those are particular priorities for Congress to be in lockstep with the Trump mandate. I mean, they're out here, arguing about a lot of other things. There's problems, I think, with the One Big Beautiful Bill. There's a lot of issues with what DOE should have accomplished. So where is Congress in all of this?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think I have a different take from you on this. I think Congress is doing a good job here. I remember being in the first term, being incredibly frustrated that Congress would not pass a bill that funded the president's priorities. Remember, we were talking about getting a national emergency declaration so that the president could take money from other programs in the Department of Defense and use them to build the border wall, and it was a huge fight. We would have loved if we just had a bill that funded all these priorities outright, and the Big Beautiful Bill does that. I think there's been a fight over the Big Beautiful Bill because of CBO projections about increased deficit spending. But there's not, everybody says there's pork in this bill. I don't know where the pork is. There's things in this bill I'd prefer weren't there, like the expansion of the SALT cap. But unfortunately, that was necessary to bring along the Republican New York representatives who weren't going to vote for the bill otherwise. So, I think actually when you look at what's in this bill and what is being done to help serve the president's agenda, I mean, most of this bill was written by the White House in terms of the big immigration funding provisions. And I think that Congress did a good job in terms of shepherding those priorities through and funding them to the extent that the administration wanted.
And I agree with you that the White House is obviously very much for this. It's just a concern about more spending, not having really any of the DOGE spending cut provisions in there. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene, even who's a big America First representative, suggesting that the AI regulation provision was kind of snuck in there. I mean, it's just there's a lot of things that really should have been taken out and line itemed instead of basically an omnibus. And so, while we could talk about some of the particulars here, that's the concern about yes, they're funding some good priorities, but overall, are they really meeting the overall agenda, not just of the White House, but I think of what the American people voted for, and DOGE is a central part of that. And so you can't isolate just, okay, these are good provisions, so we'll let the rest that's not good slide. So hopefully we'll see the Senate and Senator Mike Lee has even suggested this, take kind of a look at it and maybe amend this accordingly, and then it'll go, of course, back to the House, and we'll kind of see what happens there. But overall, do you think, Will Chamberlain, the Democrats' obstruction, frankly, of ICE enforcement of all of these things is going to be effective when you have a lawsuit that just plainly ridiculous on face, hopefully won't succeed, but you're seeing this type of pushback, and the Democrats will generally, I mean, it's not like they're just going to say, oh, okay, well, my lawsuit failed, then never mind. I mean, they always try a different way to try to, attack good conservative policy and, frankly, I think go against the U.S. Constitution. But do you think that they'll overall be in any way effective, especially as we're heading into the midterms next year?
I mean, I don't think the Democrats really will be effective here. I think the optics they're creating with these riots are making people more and more sympathetic to mass deportation, more and approve of the Trump administration's actions more and more. So I think the public support for this program will be there and will be resilient. I think whatever lawfare they try is just it's going to struggle because I don't think, the Alien Enemies Act is sort of one small piece of the overall puzzle of deporting people, and it's a new statute that, in the sense, it hasn't been used much in recent years. So there's some, that's where you're seeing, some of the more contentious and difficult legal cases. But with regard to, the normal process of deportation is still available. So it's really just a question of funding and manpower and will. And I think that the administration has that, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of viable challenges to the basic actions that ICE is taking here, which are finding people who are in the country illegally, detaining them, and removing them.
Yeah, Will Chamberlain, in the last 2 minutes that I have with you, I want to switch gears here to talk about another story that hasn't, of course, made as much of the top headlines because of the ongoing situation in Los Angeles. But this comes from the post-millennial Washington State Attorney General Nick Brown's office colluded with Perkins Coie, which is obviously a big law firm, on a federal lawsuit against Trump. This is the report. Emails reveal that Brown's office gave the law firm private advice on when and where to file the lawsuit against the Trump administration. So basically, Nick Brown, the Washington State AG, has been accused of colluding with the Seattle-based law firm Perkins Coie on its federal lawsuit against the Trump administration, raising ethics concerns. So what's going on here, and is this classic collusion in a criminal sense?
I mean, I don't think it'd be collusion in a criminal sense because it's hard to not. I mean, there's sort of an interesting dynamic whenever you have people filing amicus briefs. They want to be aligned with the party they're supporting. Now, I think it's the decision to file an amicus brief in this case is kind of bizarre, especially in support of a law firm where you have people who are employed by the state, but yet seem to be serving the interests of the law firm they used to work for. And I think there might be there's probably an ethical issue with those specific attorneys. Maybe they shouldn't be involved in this case. Maybe they shouldn't be trying to wield the office of state in the favor of a private law firm. But I have a hard time seeing a criminal case for conflict of interest here or anything like that because I'm not sure what the crime would be.
And how about any other remedies then for the Trump administration? And so, the story goes on to say that one day after Perkins Coie filed its lawsuit against the Trump administration in March, Attorney General Brown led a coalition of 21 attorneys general in filing an amicus brief in support of Perkins Coie. So Brown's office did not disclose its 10 active contracts with the law firm in the court filing, and the front of the court, brief was filed obviously to influence the court's decisions. So is there any potential, remedy here to suggest that perhaps, there's a procedural problem in light of this type of collusion?
I mean, I guess there are two remedies that would come to mind. The one is for the brief to be struck for failure to properly disclose these things if they were required to be disclosed by the court hearing the case. The second would be obviously sort of professional ethics type arguments where saying knowingly hiding something like this from the court would be seen as an ethical violation, a violation of the duty of candor. But I think that's the extent of it based on what you're telling me. I don't think it goes further than that.
Yeah, and this just, I think, from the political side, just further evidences how coordinated a lot of this lawfare is against the Trump administration, against Donald Trump personally, against his various campaigns over the last several election cycles. And Will Chamberlain, you are senior counsel at the Article 3 Project, and you and Mike Davis have been very vocal about pushing back against this type of lawfare. And, is there, or what else, I suppose, is the better question? What else should our audience know about, the ongoing lawfare and the pushback against this? Because, President Trump and his administration is just taking so much time, effort, and expense to fight some of these really, frankly, frivolous and even, I would characterize it as malicious litigation.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in a lot of different courts. I think the key takeaway is that whenever you hear somebody say there's a constitutional crisis, that crisis is being created by the judiciary. It's not being created by Trump. They're going way beyond their purview to restrain the president in areas that are very much core Article 2 authorities. And, you have cases where, courts are demanding that the administration disclose its diplomatic contacts with other countries, totally out of line. So I think and I think ultimately the Trump administration is going to prevail on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, Will Chamberlain, really appreciate your time here. We need to take a break here, but you can follow Will Chamberlain, senior counsel at the Article 3 Project on X. And, this is why all of the limited powers that are given to the federal government actually matter. It matters that they exercise their authority appropriately and, not go outside the bounds of their authority, but when their authority matters, like enforcing immigration law in the executive, like actually funding the personnel like Congress can do and should do, and then also the judiciary ensuring that they adjudicate this properly. Those are things that hopefully the federal government will continue to do, and this is why we need to understand what the powers are, how they should be overall expressed, and how they should be administered. And so it really matters here, and we'll continue to follow this story, but we'll be right back with more on the political side of the LA riots right after this.
Hello, I'm Sam Rohr, president of the American Pastors Network, a growing national network of pastors committed to the authority of Scripture and preaching the whole counsel of God. We believe biblical obedience is the foundation for revival, and impacting our culture for Christ is our duty. For too long, the pulpits of America have been silent on the important issues such as marriage and family and assault on our liberty. Join us in the battle for truth on Stand in the Gap weekend, Sunday evenings at 6 p.m. on American Family Radio, and visit us at AmericanPastorsNetwork.org.
Fostering and adoption is not a Band-Aid for infertility. It is a calling, and God can change the desire of your heart and make that so rewarding. It's the most beautiful, selfless thing. It's pure religion, but it's not a fix to I desire biological child. God has to deal with that in your heart separately.
Hannah's Heart, encouraging couples through infertility and miscarriage. Saturdays, 4 a.m. Central on AFR or on the AFR app.
Have you wanted to take your family to Kentucky to visit the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter, but just never took the time? Don't put it off any longer. Let 2025 be the year you check that off the list. In fact, you can make it an even more memorable trip when you join AFA at the Ark October 30th and 31st. On Thursday, you'll get transportation for a tour of the Creation Museum, and Friday we'll take you for a tour of the Ark Encounter. But that's just the beginning. Expand your knowledge of creation with a special dinner presentation on Thursday by Answers in Genesis astronomer Dr. Danny Faulkner. Friday, Dr. Georgia Purdom, Answers in Genesis Vice President of Educational Content, will help you dig deeper into the Bible. And Friday evening, enjoy dinner and a panel discussion with Tony Vitagliano, Walker Wildman, and Wesley Wildman, Vice Presidents of American Family Association. Visit afa.net/events today and click on AFA at the Ark. afa.net/events and click on AFA at the Ark.
Let's see, if something costs less, a lot less, but people are actually happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard joining MediShare can save you or your family up to $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true. People are just happier with it. They love being part of something that reflects and promotes their values and what they believe in. MediShare works, too. It's been around for 30 years now, and members have shared more than $7 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network, so yeah, really, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care, whether you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan that you're happy with. Here you go. You can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes, a very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. It's 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE, 833-44-BIBLE.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. Well, as we continue to talk about the ongoing riots in LA that may be spreading to a city near you soon, Newsom's non-cooperation with federal law enforcement is putting Californians at risk, and any other state governors or local mayors that do the same are also putting their citizens at risk, and none more likely than first responders, who Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass are using as buffers between the mayhem and the overall actually peaceful citizenry. So White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller posted this on X. California is the largest sanctuary state in America. The state has ordered every police department and sheriff's office in the state not to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement even if they have committed grievous crimes. Illegals are given free welfare, health care, and every other conceivable state benefit. They are made immune in every way. Simply put, the government of the state of California aided, abetted, and conspired to facilitate the invasion of the United States. I think that's incredibly well put. Well, Chris Ekstrom, who's a board member of U.S. Term Limits, has an op-ed that is coming out soon in The Blaze, talking about the riots and how Donald Trump is the man of the hour and is actually looking at this very clearly. So he joins us now. And Chris, I think that overall, like we've seen with some of the other leftist tactics that just really run against the sovereignty of the United States, this is going to backfire on them. And I think politically, this is only advantageous to Donald Trump.
Good morning, Jenna. This is such a terrible mess that I think many people who have preferred to sort of stay in their comfort zone and not pay close attention to politics, and there are Christians like that, and that's why I'm glad to be with you, especially today, because of your audience, who I think could be really pivotal in this situation. They need to look and watch Mayor Bass. Mayor Bass is an unapologetic cultural Marxist who basically is blaming everybody else but the policies of California, long-standing policies of California, for the crisis that's in L.A. We're seeing on the streets, no matter what they say, this is a crisis. And this lady is up there every day basically blaming everybody else except her policies and the state of California's policies for the disorder, for the chaos that we're all witnessing on TV every day. It reminds me of during the worst part of Vietnam when you had people coming on trying to explain everything away and tell you, don't worry about it, there's light at the end of the tunnel, it's all going to be okay. And we end up with helicopters taking people off the top of an embassy roof. We are at the stage where if President Trump is not supported in these insane blue states by masses of people, they need to start doing something for themselves too. We're going to end up with the helicopters coming to evacuate people in metaphorically. And that's how extreme it is. This is a very, very extreme situation.
Yeah, it is. And I think that cannot be understated. You know, this isn't just as cavalier as Gavin Newsom would suggest when he's going on TV, you know, just callously and I think flippantly baiting Donald Trump. Well, you know, come arrest me, you know, whatever. It's I mean, it looks like a petulant toddler with a beef. And, you know, yet I think Stephen Miller's comment is incredibly important to acknowledge and underscore that California is the largest sanctuary state in America. And by definition, I think, you know, sanctuary states are, and the legal view of that is so problematic to a nation of laws and a nation of order. To say that, you know, we are carving out this space within the sovereign nation and the territory of the United States of America to just be like, yeah, you know, we don't like the federal law. We don't like what the law says. So we're carving out this specific area to just say, hey, you know, it doesn't matter what federal law says. We're going to do something different is really problematic. And we're seeing that ideology play out here.
Well, that's right. And this is the deeper dive that you're not going to hear in the normal press, even our own press that's sympathetic. Cultural Marxism and Marxism in general regards law as a fig leaf. They don't believe in God, right? They don't believe in our really democratic procedures. What they believe in is a sort of one-party totalitarian state, if they could get it, in which they impose their views. So they're not sitting around troubled about the civil liberties of somebody who may be mistakenly arrested. That's all fake. What the way they view this is it's chaos that they have created, and they know they created, and now it's playing out, and they are reveling in it. I mean, you have the mayor of the city who's not even talking about the actual violence and the riotous behavior, other than to say she condemns it once in a while. But her main focus is, oh, this should never have happened in the first place. because we just don't want to have our illegal aliens expelled from the country. And we are not going to cooperate with that. As you pointed out about what Stephen Miller says, and he's totally spot on, these people are proud to not cooperate with the legal authorities in pursuing this policy, which is by an elected president who won the popular vote, even in their own, they don't care about our republic and our constitutional structures. They want to simply assert constantly that the will of the people is in this direction. No, the will of the people is to get this sorted out. And frankly, I've never seen something in my lifetime that was more disturbing than the open, unapologetic hatred, basically, towards America that I'm seeing right now every time I turn on the TV.
So well said. And I'm speaking with Chris Ekstrom, who is a board member of U.S. Term Limits, has a number of great pieces in the Blaze, including one that will be forthcoming today or tomorrow. You can continue to check that out at the Blaze, talking about the politics of this riot. And it's such a great point that, while the left is suggesting that they're somehow defenders of democracy, they're the ones that are trying purposefully to tear down our national sovereignty, to make an absolute mockery of the U.S. Constitution, to promote this type of cultural Marxism and, frankly, authoritarianism. Because, like I was suggesting earlier in the show, I mean, this mirrors 2020 in the sense that, it's Gavin Newsom that's now suggesting that Trump is going beyond his executive authority when he's merely enforcing immigration law that is a specifically federal subject matter, when he himself so grievously violated and overextended the executive authority in his own state. And he's saying that in a legal document with a straight face that clearly he doesn't even believe in. And so the arguments that the left say in the media and even in court filings, that's not even what we necessarily should respond to, because they are just posturing. It gets to something a lot deeper, that they genuinely hate the United States of America. They hate national sovereignty. They want a globalist society. They want a total state of authoritarianism, and they are trying to get there by any way imaginable, including trying to convince their own activist judges to help them tear down the U.S. Constitution.
Well, the last piece that they really need was to have censorship of the digital media. And that is something, obviously, they've aspired towards. They've achieved that, by the way, globalists, I'm speaking of as a sort of vague group, in Brazil. You basically cannot criticize the state in certain ways in Brazil, or you're probably going to be arrested. And that's happening as we speak in a really large and important country to our south. Look, these things all do come together at a certain point, and you can see it in the obsession that Mayor Bass has with President Trump being the one who used the National Guard and brought the National Guard into the whole story, and God forbid the Marines, right? They're terrified that the Marines go in there and just sort this out and put an end to this ridiculous situation. She wants Trump to allow Governor Newsom to do what he should have done in the first place. Why? Is that because she wants to make it better? No, because she wants to take control of this as a narrative and draw it out as some sort of peaceful demonstration against our immigration policy. I mean, it is so perverse and so insane that it is literally satanic. This is
well said.
The American people are watching a satanic ploy of the left. And by the way, it wouldn't be a Chris Ekstrom interview if I didn't put the spotlight on some bad Republicans. There are people who consider themselves libertarians and Republicans who are open borders. I'm thinking of the Koch brothers in particular and some of their allies. They are part of this picture.
Absolutely. We got to leave it there, but so well said. We need to be praying for the future of our country. You can always reach me and my team, Jenna at afr.net.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may